Hello and welcome. My name's Campbell, and this is autodidactic, which of course means to be self-educated. And today I wanted to have a look at New York and the fact that it was a star city that was they say founded, back in the 1600s. And today we can still see a lot of these forts, the remnants of them, out in the harbour. And of course, the Statue of Liberty is also sitting on a star. So let's get into it. So the Star Fort or battery that was in New Amsterdam and claimed when they took over that region. It's called Fort Amsterdam, and they actually changed its name as well to Fort George, says among other names. And they say it was a fortification on the southern tip of Manhattan Island at the confluence of the Hudson and East Rivers in what is now called New York City. The fort and island were the center of trade and the administrative headquarters for the Dutch rule of the colony of the New Netherland. Now, it's actually the first time I've come across this New Netherland. I've definitely, heard it called New Amsterdam, but New Netherlands says here was a colony of the Dutch Republic located on the east coast of what is now the United States. The claimed territories extended from Delmarva Peninsula to Cape Cod. Settlements were established in what became the states of New York. So I've actually never heard that term before, New Netherland, but there we go. It's now on Wikipedia, so it must be the truth, right? And of course, this is Wiki, so this is the narrative that we're looking at here, not necessarily the truth. His story. The fort was the nucleus for the settlement on the island, which was first named New Amsterdam and is central to New York's early history. So it says, before it was constructed, there was a purchase of Manhattan Island. The fort was known under various names, such as Fort James, Fort William Hendrick, and its anglicized Fort William Henry, Fort Anne, and Fort George. So they kept changing its name, but there's not much of a story as to who built this. They do give us, a builder's name. It says the fort changed hands 8 times in various battles. The first episode involving the Dutch, who surrendered the fort to England in 1664. And blah, 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 goes into the American history and just basically, his story. So if we come down here, and it says establishment 1621 to 1660, Fort Amsterdam on Manhattan Island and the Greater Dutch colony of New Netherland was chartered by the Dutch West India Company, which is, again, I've heard a lot about the Dutch East India Company. Dutch West India Company? I mean, never heard of them. Leave me a comment, guys. Have you guys heard of the Dutch West India Company or New Netherland before? Because I don't know, am I going through a Mandela effect here? It says the Dutch West India Company was a Dutch chartered company that was founded in 1621 and went defunct in 1792. So pretty interesting. Dutch West India Company. Just did a quick search. Yeah, Dutch East India Company still exists. All right, so reality is okay, at least for the day. Um, but yeah, so this we've obviously all heard a lot about the Dutch East India Company, but the Dutch West India Company? Interesting. And it goes on to say, before Fort Amsterdam was constructed, the Dutch settlers erected a large stone building on the future location of the fort that served as a meeting house. It was surrounded by some 30 makeshift dwellings made from timber and bark, and finished building materials were scarce. Okay, so this is, of course, the story they tell us, right? Everyone back in the 1600s was living in timber and bark huts. That no, technology, no electrical tools, no steam, machinery, anything like that. Just all hand tools, pretty rudimentary. And they somehow went from that to building a star fort, a full-size star fort with all the trimmings. And they don't tell us, all they do tell us is that building materials were scarce. So where did all this new building material come from to build this star? The structures were surrounded by red cedar palisades, which served as a temporary fort. Manhattan Island, at this time was covered by woods and brush with several marshes. So it's not talking about any quarries, right? Lots of wood, bark, but where'd all this stone come from? During the 17th century, no settlement was secure without a fortification for defense and refuge. Obviously, just to push forward the narrative that it's us, the humans, the men and women that are these beastly little warlike people who just want to run around and kill and destroy. But of course, that's not the truth. That's his story. There is a group of beings down here that love to do that. And of course, they are the people whose name shall not be mentioned because they actually own all the media, right? So this is just propagating a narrative where they talk about war and we all need a defensing and all these forts. And the truth is that most of the star forts around the world have never ever seen battle. So they give us this story they were all built for war, but none of them, very very few of them actually were ever in a battle. So they're clearly not forts. They're something completely different, and they weren't built; they were found. So in 1625, after much deliberation, it was decided the best location for the fort would be at the southern tip of Manhattan Island, with the idea it would be able to defend against any ship attempting to ascend the Hudson River. So again, fairly silly narrative. These forts built to defend against ships. Ships can just sail outside the cannon range, right? And cannons, for a moving ship, not that accurate, right? So again, silly, silly story. And here we get the name. The fort was designed by Kryn Fredrickson. And who was Kryn Fredrickson? Well, it says that he worked for the Dutch West India Company. In 1626, the Dutch West India Company directed Kryn Fredrickson to construct a fort at the tip of Manhattan Island. And this is really the only place where he pops up. This is a nice little illustration here of the star. Got our windmills in here. And of course, they're telling us that, everything else was just fairly primitive. You can see this little shack on the shore made of bark and wood and the horse and cart, but they're whacking this up in the background. And look how big this is, and even the buildings compared to this little shack, right? Just this height wise. But the only way that he comes up, this Kryn Fredrickson, is basically as the name, right? As the builder of this star in Fort Amsterdam. So, pretty dodgy story, really, and nothing at all about where they got the stone from. That no talk of quarries. What they say is the original plan was to face the wall with stone. So even just if it was facing stone, still a lot of stone that needed to be quarried, right? And transported to where the star was. But this was never accomplished. The fort was built of hard-packed earth or rubble because earthworks would absorb the shock of cannon fire without collapsing, as stone walls might. Friedrichsen had instructions to employ the help of nearby Indians in the fort's construction, and it says here they were never taken into slavery. So now they're trying to say that this fort, we have these pictures, and we'll go through them in a minute, and they're saying it wasn't even stone. Okay, but I do not believe that, and that's probably part of their narrative because they can't explain where all this stuff came from, right, and how it was built, and that's because they did not build it. All right, so here's a few pictures. So this is from 1637. Obviously, it's a painting or a drawing of some kind, and we see the wall of the star here. Okay, and does that look like earth and rubble to you, or does that look like cut stone, right? And it could be, just facing stone, like they said they wanted to build, or more likely, it's a complete stone structure, like all stars are. But that definitely is not illustrated as being, earth and rubble. And this is from 1637, this illustration. Not sure what's going on down here. Geez, that looks a bit ominous. But also, we've got all these little houses in the front, clearly made from wood and just clearly a different level of technology to this star. And the size, look at this, the cathedral, right? In the middle, always, cathedral in the star. and our windmills here for their free energy. Here we go again, Fort New Amsterdam, Manhattan Island, and here we have the star. Okay, again, we have these buildings that, look like they're made from wood. I mean, this is just obviously a pencil drawing, but that star, again, what does that look like to you? Does that look like rammed earth and rubble, or does that look like masonry? Because they do love their free masonry. And here we have, this is New Amsterdam. Don't have a date. It looks like it's just a reproduction, just showing us a few things. So an interesting thing is, see this? This is a canal. Okay, these are bridges going over the canal, and you can see it stops there, and this one stops here. And this is what's happened to many of our star cities. And you can see this is a star city, it's walled, all right, with our ravelins coming off it, these pointy bits. And here is, of course, the star itself. Okay, complete, definite. We see these stars everywhere, right? Definitely a star, like a star citadel. So there's probably more of this, right? But these canals, yeah, these have been everywhere in all the old cities. Like any old city with Tartarian buildings would have once had canals running all through them, and these canals have either been covered up by the mud flood, like filled in, or filled in by hand. And as you can see, this is just a silly way. It's not going anywhere. So they've obviously found it. Either this was, left unfilled by the mud flood, or they've opened it up a bit to use it. But I would say they found it like this. Okay, so this is Manhattan Island, right? We've got the Starfort down here, and a very interesting thing here is this Wall Street. We've all heard of Wall Street. It's where they make a lot of money, right? They do all their trading on the stock exchange. Right? Stock, animals, right? I think that's what they think we are. And trading, right? They're still trading, 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 just like they did with the Indians, apparently. But Wall Street it's called Wall Street because that's where the wall was. The wall of this walled Star City, Wall Street. Did you know that? Here's another shot again. The star, it's there, the star of the show. Okay, again, does this look like a masonry construction or rammed earth? I mean, you can even see that they've drawn it great. I mean, it's not the best picture, but this looks like stone, like a stone wall to me. Let me know what you think in the comments. And here again, we have the canals with all the bridges going over them. And then it just stops and just stops. And even in here, it looks like we have a remnant of a bit of water. All right, so this would have all been canals. And here we have the wall, right? Wall Street. And I think this is probably the same picture. Just in black and white, right? But if we come in here, it's a bit higher resolution. You can see these are bricks. Okay, they've been drawn as bricks. And again, I don't have a date for this one. Is it on here anywhere? What does that say? Oh, there you go, 1660. The Castello plan of New Amsterdam. So the castle plan, is that what it means? Castle of New Amsterdam. Okay, drawn as masonry. And they're saying it's rammed earth. And of course, they don't even mention this wall, right? What are they going to try and say that this defensive wall was rammed earth as well? Likely story, right? We can see down here, we've got, looks like a man-made bank, right? Man-made shoreline, which we see in so many cities, in rivers and things, like all these man-made riverbanks, which are basically the canals, man-made canals, right? You can see there's lots of, looks like fruit trees, but lots of geometry, right? In the ground with the way the gardens and everything are laid out. So again, that's something that we see in old world cities everywhere, right? Look at it all these geometrical cymatic, right? That one there is a definite cymatic shape that I've seen, but most of them, I guess, just got to get the right frequency, right? And maybe that's a good way to grow food, right? Grow them in cymatic frequencies and use a bit of electroculture. Is this what they were doing? So this is obviously a fairly recent drawing, not to scale or anything. It says New Amsterdam 1664. And again, they've drawn this star looking like it's made out of stone. Okay, and then we see the wall here, and it looks like they're trying to say it was wood. I mean, that's look at it, the height though. I mean, this is obviously not to scale, but look how they've depicted it, the height compared to these, what, three-story houses. And it looks like they're trying to say it's wood. So they're just really messing with the story because the truth is they can't explain it. They can't explain any of this stuff because they didn't build it, but they want to take ownership. They want to claim it as their own. The they, again, that name that cannot be said on social media. This is what they want. They want to be gods on earth, is what they want to be, right? We've all seen the G in their little aprons. Is that what it means? They want to be, because they definitely want to. They want to be gods on earth, and they want us to all be their slaves, right? Their cattle. And here we have the city of New Amsterdam on the island of Manhattan in the colony of New Netherland, and on 1660. What's that? Anno Dominion, is that right? After death, AD. It's all in French by the look. The Noot River. But here's the fort, Fort Amsterdam again. And this is just a drawing, but it doesn't seem to be depicted as made from rammed earth. And here we have the canals, and here we have the wall, right? The wall of the city, Wall Street, which they have taken over and turned into the financial hub of the world. So there's lots of these maps out there. A lot of them are reproductions of the original, but again, the fort, depicted like it's a stone fort, not earth. And here we have the canals. We have this bit of water sitting here. Looks like there's a few more bits of water, like the remnants of the canals, because all of these streets would have been canals. And this is the thing, right? Water carries current. Obviously, batteries, star forts are batteries, right? Are they salt water batteries? Are they using, saline or just water with some kind of electrolyte in it, like salt, as their salt bridge? And are these actually creating energy and storing it? Because most of the time they are close to water, right? The rivers or the ocean. But I'm sure that many of them as well that we see that are up on high ground, were just built on energy nodes, right? Ley line nodes, telluric energy, as they call it. And here's the wall again. I mean, here's an interesting big building out in the middle of nowhere, but not very good resolution on this, unfortunately. So just a bit of a look at the bay off New York, and this is Ellis Island. Again, this is a man-made island, right? These are man-made walls. Okay, I would say that this is a remnant, actually, of when the water levels were different, because this looks like a canal going through the middle of them. All right, and we now have a bridge going to the mainland, but I would say that this would have been probably a bit more connected in the past. But look at this building, right? Tartarian as, and this is the island where all the immigrants were brought into New York, or so they say. This is the Statue of Liberty. This is Ellis Island here in the background. Now, I think there's a Mandela effect as well. I think a lot of people, and I'm not up on it, so let me know in the comments, but I think a lot of people remember the Statue of Liberty being on Ellis Island, or at least the island it's on being called Ellis Island. So let me know your thoughts on that. But here we see the statue, and look at the size of this pedestal to start with, right? It's almost as tall as the statue, and it looks very wide. It looks like maybe there was something different on there. So I don't know how old this Statue of Liberty is. The story is it was given to the US by the French in the 1800s, and they built it and then they towed it behind a boat across the ocean to get it here, and then somehow lifted it up onto this pedestal, which, how? All right, look how tall this pedestal is. Okay, I think it was around the 1880s on a star, and again on a man-made island, right? This is a man-made wall. And how did they build that into the ocean here? Like, how were they building these walls? Like, because, of course they tell us the islands were already there. Another picture, this is top-down view, so you can see this is a definite star, right? That it's sitting on. And again, look at the size of this base that it's on. How did they get it up there if they got it in the 1880s? I mean, I would say it was probably there. We don't know for sure. We've got this lamp on top. Is that signifying that maybe it used to be a lighthouse? Kind of looks like a lighthouse base. I don't know. Let me know in the comments. And here we go, another shot. Definite star and the land of liberty. And this is just a shot of Ellis Island back in the day. The new facility on Ellis Island began receiving immigrants on January 1st, 1892. So not long after they got the statue, apparently. Annie Moore, a teenage girl from Ireland, accompanied by her two younger brothers, oh, they sound like orphans, made history as the very first immigrant to be processed at Ellis Island. Over the next 62 years, more than 12 million immigrants would arrive into the United States via Ellis Island. And so this is what they built, apparently, right? A massive Tartarian building to process immigrants. And of course, it had to have be standing on a man-made island, right? So there's a few more pictures down here. And again, this is just stuff that's been found and claimed by those who wish to rule us, those who wish to be gods, right? Claimed, and they get their free masonry and basically own all the buildings, right? They've just moved in and taken over everything, taken the best for themselves. So they've got all the government houses, the palaces, all this kind of stuff. And of course, they have to make up his story to say that they actually built it all, when the truth is they found it and stole it, or they literally took it over. They invaded. The whole story is probably much more based around an invasion of sorts, I think, rather than them finding these places. I think a lot of places were attacked. We see this, a lot in the city pictures of the 1860s and 70s, where we have all these apparent fires that happen to take down on brick buildings. And so that some kind of war went on, it looks like. And I guess they just ran around after it was over and claimed all the best buildings for themselves and then started to rebuild in their image, right? No creativity, brutalism, and basically the New York that we see today. So there you go. New York, New Amsterdam, a star city. Did you know? With a star fort. Star forts out in the bay, man-made islands, and of course a walled city. And the wall is on Wall Street, the financial sector. That was the extremity of this walled city. So is that some kind of energy takeover, right? So they can do their trading of stock. What does that really mean? Trading of stock. Interesting words. So there you go, guys. Hope you enjoyed that one. Just a video on basically how they find and take over cities, and they just hide all the details in his story and basically try and tell us that they created all this stuff. And of course, they never mention the thing like the walls, do they, around New York, New Amsterdam? And also, let me know, have you heard of New Netherland and the Dutch East India Trading Company? Because I haven't come across those terms before, and I've been looking into this stuff for years. So I found that interesting. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed that one. Please give me a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Leave me a comment. So there you go, guys. Thanks for spending some time with me. Have an amazing day, and I'll talk to you all on the next upload. Bye for now.
Remember, in the end, nobody wins unless everybody wins. Come on!